start?
Yeah, I think so.
Is
it time?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about making statistics fun, using computer games for motivation and fear reduction. I don't even know if I should call them games, really applied game concepts to help with the content. But some of our title is just to get you in the room, right? We're going to talk about who we are, what we need, all the stuff that's in the proceedings. We're going to let you play some of our games if you have a mobile device, or we'll walk through them on the screen. So you'll see what students here on campus actually get to experience last semester and are going to continue to experience this semester. You want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Dr. Rosina Hassoun, and I have a PhD in anthropology from the University of Florida, Gainesville. I also have a Bachelor's of Science and a Master's of Science from Texas A&M in zoology and biology, respectively. I'm a new teacher here. I'm tenure track, and this is my second year here.
And that's how we met. It's my second year here as well. We went to the same meetings and started talking about our interests. I'm Dr. Bravender. My background is in social learning and online environments. That's just what I love, and that sort of evolved into game-based learning for all levels of students. So this is my second year here. My doctorate's from Eastern. I was one of the only people from Michigan who came in the year I did. So I bring a lot of experience and connections from the other schools, and I'd like to know what everyone else is up to so we can sort of do it better. So our challenge with you.
Okay. So I guess what is the problem? Basically, if someone had told me 10 years ago that I'd be teaching statistics, I probably would have said, no, that could never happen. Anthropologists don't normally teach statistics, but this is a department of sociology, and it's combined. And it's luckily that I did have that background. So I came in and all of a sudden had to review all my stats and get ready for teaching statistics and try to figure out what the problems were with my students from the first semester. I could see that students came in with bad attitudes towards statistics. You just say the word, and they already have some of them with bad attitude. The math skills in this part of Michigan, the thumb was even lower than what I found at LCC and MSU and other places I've taught. So I was concerned about that. And so the real problem, I think fear is the mind killer. There are certain students that are so afraid of math and statistics that the first thing they do is shut completely down. And that first equation that they have to do that's difficult, they can do means and modes and averages usually, but the first one that really shuts them down is a standard deviation. And getting them past that stage is critical. So that was the problem. I think anxiety, fear, and my motto for my class is it's not rocket science. So hopefully I can get them past that step. And I think basically, as you'll see, I think the game does a real good, I think it's a start to dealing with the problems of math phobia and also the issue of motivation, low motivation by many of the students.
And so we embarked on action research. I'm an educator, so action research is my love and joy. But we were having a conversation, and she said she had this problem. And, well, I could maybe help. My games work with my principals. Let's see if we could do something here. So in the process, we thought, okay, well, let's try something new, explore the results, and maybe we'll try it again. So right now we're sort of exploring the results with you today. But what are simulations? You've probably heard the term. You've probably heard like a flight simulator where you're over training to be an astronaut or a pilot, you're trying things, but they can be as basic. We're going to look at text-based simulations today, which if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure novels, those were my favorites. That's essentially what it is. They're branch scenarios. They give you a place where the player becomes a participant because any choice they make leads to a consequence of that choice. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but they don't get to go back. And there is some level of anxiety that comes with pushing that button because what you do with the simulation is that everybody, where in a quiz, you just get, yay, this is wrong, or this is right. You have this immediate affirmation or sadness, but with the simulation, you're branched to another place. Every answer leads to a different piece of feedback, or it can lead to that. So it is a motivator for learning. You can tailor it to your audience, but it also works with their developmental level. If they get the first question wrong, you realize maybe they need to be routed to the right answer and using different terminology. Maybe you have to take them a different way. So that's how we came to the idea of, okay, well, if they're really scared about statistics, they're not taking this in, what can we do? Well, let's see what happens. Why this one is cheaper than taking them on a field trip anywhere. It's pretty easy to construct if you have me, because that's what I do. There's a pause button, so they can stop. The timing isn't there to say, oh, the pressure sort of goes away, but they really have to think about the elements, and you can even add, you remove this element of danger, like that you can do them at home, so the teacher doesn't have to see your score, your peers don't have to see your score. You can practice it over and over and over again. So what we did is we created 2 different games using 2 different pieces of software for various reasons that I won't get into, but you'll get to see both of them today. We wanted to just say, okay, we used the same statistics questions, or virtually the same questions, all from the textbook, all from the class, and then how did you put it into class?
Well, initially I didn't know how it would sell, if it would sell itself, to just say it's a game. So I had to use bribery. I guess we've all done that before. So I bribed them, and technically I gave them a few points, and it didn't take much. I gave them 5 points, and it basically was 2 points for taking the game, and that regardless of how many times they took it. And then I gave them extra points for filling out the surveys, because that was one thing I wanted to get surveys back for our action research. So for 5 extra points, I think I got my money's worth.
Yeah, and the survey answered, what do you like about each game? What do you dislike? Did it help you learn statistics? How do you feel? And then they had a pre and post test, and we scored those. So this is what the tool I used called SimWriter. Some days I don't even know if it's worth showing the slide, and then other presentations, I wish I would have seen it. So this is what it looks like. This is what the person might see that's taking the game, but this is what the teacher sees. I just simply say, okay, this is the bad choice, and I'm going to make the bad choice go to the space next. Here's a good and mediocre choice, and so on and so forth. So there's the branching, which you can see closer here, and the arrows just tell it where to go. In some places it might lead, like these good and mediocre choices might have the same feedback, but one is not the best answer. So the hard part for the teacher developing this is figuring out what are those logically incorrect answers, just like Brian was talking about, that's part of the learning yourself, because you start to really think about where your students are going to fail, and then what kind of feedback do they need to see, because they don't necessarily want, oh, you got it wrong, because then they'll stop and they'll shut down and say, oh, I knew I was bad at math, I'm done. In this particular piece of software, I can actually give it partial points, partial perfect, partial failure. I can connect it to learning objectives, so that at the end, the student will actually get, you can have a bar graph or paragraphs and say, okay, great, you did 100% on analyzing simulations, but your ability to compare solutions, you've got to work on that. So it takes each individual objective and gives them a score, so they can look at certain things in math. So if you have a mobile device, you will put this in, you can, but I'll bring up the game itself, and that is a 0 over there. It is case, the uppercase is uppercase, it's case specific. So we call this one regressialists. They all have sort of these statistics names.
It's not coming up.
No, I didn't click it yet. I'm letting them in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so which one is it? All right, so
That's mine. Is that mine?
you guys gonna check that? All right. Okay, so here's what
it's closer.
this game looks like. Okay, you're in a simulation. I had heavy use of graphics in mind just because I'm the educational technology professor, right? They sort of expect that of me. But this is all, so this game is all text-based. There is no sound. There are a lot of graphics. You hear the phone beep, you get a text message, oh, there's a giant vortex, I've been sucked in, get help. So you have to click continue to go through the process. You race to the scene, there's the cool vortex in the background. There's nothing you can do, so you're building up this sense of urgency, and I land into this place. I'm used to putting people in more of a real-world situation, so this was new for me also, but it was great because my 5- and 7-year-old loved the idea of what I was doing, so you start to see some statistics, numbers in the end. You're in this place, you have to follow the path, connect the symbols, so you see a lot of this. We build in resources that they have from their statistics class, and then they have to answer a question. So what does this symbol represent? We start off easy. So if they get the question wrong, so say I said sum, and I hit submit, it took away an answer. This is something the students are familiar with, the multiple choice. Okay, so we ease them into this, clicking the button, taking we're just going to keep clicking through. And it'll ask another question. So right now, the system itself is keeping track. These are just basic opening questions. If I want to put, I can go all the way. I'm just going to give myself. So, somewhere in there it told me that I had to save my dad, that was the guy who sent me the text message. So I find this cave, I have to go through, I have to choose answers. So if you click on these pictures and then hit submit, something will happen. Oh no! So I got the answer right because now I've been able to get away from this dungeon. That's what it's telling me through the text. I can save my dad. But there are, oh no, now I've been caught by this guy. So I'm almost to the exit and this guy shows up. You'll notice this theme that goes on, so on and so forth. But we answer a lot of questions. And you'll notice the things that we're giving them the motivator through the process. So they've done a little statistics, then they've gone to something that, seems dangerous to them, but it's not. They could retake the test at any point, but you notice there's no back button. They can't redo an answer. They have to play the whole game over again, just like that sort of choose your own adventure novel. And we go on, and I'm going to click through a bunch of these. That's our evil troll. Probably. Good, I go. They want you to see the other game. Okay, so this guy comes out. Anytime I've done something maybe I don't like, he shows up. And sometimes I do go back to this thing that students we know are familiar with. So this version of the game will only give you multiple choice questions. Dad's there. So here's my score at the end. I know, based on these 5 different objectives, where I rank. I need more practice with symbols and measures of central tendency, but I know exactly how I did in each of these. So I can go back to my book that Dr. Hassoun has given me and say, man, I need to study calculating the mean, median, mode. Does this make sense so far? So this is what the students went through. They got to play.
Do they do this as a test, or is this like part of a lesson?
No, actually, I gave them, I started in class, so I explained how to do it in class, and there was some class time. And then after that, they could play it at home, anywhere they wanted to, on the bus.
It's mobile friendly. It works on PC or Mac.
Just more of a review?
It was basically, they had been introduced to the basic ideas. And I see this as more remedial in my classes for students who just aren't getting it and have the lower motivation. So I used it as a remedial tool, teaching tool.
So what do you think?
Did you play it?
If you were a freshman or a sophomore, would you play through quick things? Would you play it in front of people or in the privacy of your own home? So you don't want anyone to see your score. Would you do it for extra credit? Oh yeah, right? And so I only work with graduate students, so this was a nice break for me. And then we had a second game. Again, same questions, but we wanted to tease out more than just, are you learning? What do you like about it? if we were to do this again, what sorts of things. So the first one had different components, and then this is a different piece of software, Articulate Storyline.
I used Articulate Storyline, which I've used quite a bit on online teaching. And it also has the feature, this is what they see, it has voiceover capacity, and it does slide-by-slide voiceover, so you don't have to repeat, with Camtasia or others, you have to keep doing it over and over again. So it's very easy to get the voice in. It has a quiz feature that allows you not only to do multiple choice, but a variety of different quiz types, including more active and interactive quizzes, where I can take any kind of a graphic I want to and make it clickable, make it movable, have them do something with in the quiz. So I think that's nice that I have that possibility. I can put backgrounds to my quiz questions so that those backgrounds can be pertinent to the question. It also has branching. Of course, it looks so slightly different from the branching that you get with Marlena. And I wasn't a branching expert here, so I'm learning as I go along about making more branching and more scaffolding within the game itself. So as you can see in this particular, this is one of the questions, and my evil sorcerer is up there. He's warning them. They have to figure out which one of these houses has a certain number of people per house, and they have to figure out which one of the houses, the numbers, lies outside one standard deviation. So they're actually doing something to figure out, the question. So they have to click the right number.
So this game can be found here. You'll notice there are differences. This one has multiple types of questions. It has sound, but again, it is case sensitive.
And there's a considerable learning curve with it. I did not put scores in because I didn't know yet how to do that. There's a way to score within Articulate, so I'm learning for this semester how to do that. And yeah, I make funny voices. They're not great, but my students seem to get a kick out of me being a troll and stuff like that. So.
All right, so I'll hit play.
Welcome to the Dimension of Status Dalica. This is a learning simulation game, and in this game we'll look at symbols, central tendency, and standard deviation. Copyright Rosina Hassoun, 2014. Please click the next button.
And up here, do you have resources?
Yeah.
The students can always access resources versus in the other game where it just popped up right before they would take a question. This is always there.
I guess you're wondering how you play Status Dalica, and you will see that there are slides that will provide instructions on what you need to do in most of the slides. The navigation is at the bottom of the slide normally and allow you to go to the next or to the previous slide, except for a few exceptions like when you get stuck in the dungeon. You can also use the outline to go to any slide in the game, but you need to complete all the challenges in order to get your grade.
So she's got the menu bar on the left side for them to go back and work through. That I could click here.
The first learning objective for this simulation is, of course,
so again, it's the same thing.
It
Stuck.
appears that you've gotten a text message, and it's from your dad, and he's being dragged into something. Something.
It was something.
All right. So then you end up in this place, and you go on the road.
Yes, we do. We're all our own symbols here, look.
Okay. So it's a lot of the same things. So we wanted to keep similarities between the two to tease out control for something, anyways. So they've got the symbols in the trees, and they go to the castle.
Status Dalica. I'm the Socialist Mathematica. By now you may realize that you're in a different dimension, where numbers and statistics have power. Your father asked me to help you get back home. I will give you a map.
So we get this map, and the students then can click on the numbers and go to a different task.
So they know where they're going. They have an overall view of what they're
So they
going to
can
do.
always come back to this map. And then
Well, I hope you've reviewed your symbols because you're
they can drag and drop a symbol into the bucket.
located in this lovely valley on the mountainsides and
them put this on 2 slides next time, have them go through, I put a lot on 1 slide. I
What?
learned by doing.
All you do is a drag and drop
So
exercise.
say I just randomly put these in here. Oh, that's incorrect. Please try again. So I immediately know that this is incorrect, but above and beyond that, I end up in the dungeon with this guy.
Our Lucius has got them.
You must use the magical resources that Mathematica gave you to find the correct symbols.
So now I have to go back. So he's telling me, like, you've done wrong. Why won't it let me?
It should go away, actually. If you keep it on play, it'll go away, and they'll have an opportunity to work behind it. Maybe that's one of the things I need to fix. There you go. There are your symbols.
There they are.
So you have to click on the right one to get out.
There you go. So then it takes me back, and so on and so forth. Same thing. So you notice this question was the last one. It's all pretty similar.
And I have a surprise challenge for you. You outwitted me, but I'm glad I did it.
When you get through all the challenges, you win.
Best wishes.
Yeah.
Bye until we meet again.
Best wishes. So
I've been great sick about you. I am so proud of you.
you saved your
The old
dad.
voice doesn't work very well.
Anyway, so what did you think about that game? I mean, they're different. They have differences. What do you think students would prefer? I mean, you're teachers, right? You've been doing this forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How come you keep using dad?
Oh, the dad is sucked into the game, and that's why you have to save your dad.
Yeah, I don't.
I could
But-
say my mom next time, doesn't matter.
No, but I'm
You have
just
to
saying
suggest
it could be a
It's just
friend.
A friend?
right.
Okay.
The arc of the story
I mean,
came
they might
up.
have dad issues or mom issues or no mom, no
That's
dad.
true.
That is very
That's
true.
true.
Issues.
The issue
Hopefully they have a
representation.
friend.
Yeah, it's an issue. And skin coloration and representation and all that, being an anthropologist, I also worry about that as well.
I purposely tried to pick graphics that were opposite backgrounds, I mean, just because of my own background in design and the questions I had there. But and then I knew in SimWriter I was trying to come up with these logically incorrect answers, and spent more time in, okay, if they've gone wrong, what do I need to say to move them so they know how to get it right the next time? So we learned some things. We have some summary statistics and some statistical analysis based on those pre and post, but we asked them first if they thought statistics was a difficult class. Because that, to me, was an important question to ask above and beyond the game playing. We also asked them if they felt comfortable talking to their teacher, which they all responded, yes, they're comfortable asking questions in class, but this was a pretty interesting spread. One being strongly agree to 5 strongly disagree. Did you like using the simulation games? Yeah, they all seem to like it in some way. I mean, I suppose although the lecture does work sometimes, they got to do it in class, and they got to be in the computer lab. So we had anticipated that they would like it at some point. The level of difficulty of the questions, they said, was just right. Now, they had taken a pretest at this point, so they've been exposed to the content. We reinforced the content here. Would you like more practice? Overwhelmingly, yes, we'd like to use these more. And do you think it helped you with your understanding of statistics? That's sort of a vague question on purpose, but yeah. What questions did you like? Looking at the pictures and then answering the questions versus reading the text. So right where you were. I have since asked them about, brought up the video question because you can put video into any of these. And how many times did you play the games? Well, I thought this was interesting because they could replay them. They could replay them at home. And how many reported playing it more than once? I thought it was interesting because we often have this feeling that students will just do it once and then they're done, and that's great. But they're self-reporting that they did this multiple times, even though they're only getting the little credit once. And if you were given more access, what would you like? They'd all love extra credit. Who knew? They all love extra credit. They'd like to do it at home or class time. They could click as many of these as applied. So we know they're interested in it. And this really was just here's a problem I have, and I might have a way to help. And that's just where it came from. So we know what boxes they check, but they also get to give us qualitative information they get to type out what did they like, what didn't they like. Is our student here yet?
Yeah.
Oh,
Do you want me to? Yeah, come on. This is next.
you have to do this?
This is
Okay,
Miss
so
Alexandra
I'm
Weiss.
and I was in her statistics class last semester, and we had to play both games, and then we had to take the survey afterwards as to whether or not you enjoyed the game and all of the questions that they presented to you, and then we could give like additional feedback of our own, like type out answers for them. And honestly, like playing both games, I mean, as a student, you want to play a game to help reinforce the information that you're learning. It makes it so you can apply it to your everyday life, and so you can better understand it and recall it from memory later on. Whereas when you don't necessarily have that reiteration of the material you're learning, you kind of just forget about it and you move on to the next things that you have to learn. Whereas this really helped like reinforce the basis of statistics and where we needed to know like the foundations, the fundamentals, to help us learn those more advanced things that were in the class. Now, both the games were fun to play, but as they kind of said, the one with the talking was a lot more fun. It was more engaging, it made you want to pay attention a little bit more, it made it so you actually enjoyed what you were doing, because sometimes when you're a student and you have so many things to read, when you have to read to do something else, like it just kind of gets mumbled and it goes like in one ear and out the other in a sense. But the pictures on the game that you had to read, I thought could have been more visually appealing for the game with the audio cues, and it really reinforced like the material that we had covered. It was a lot of fun having to like drag and drop things and being able to do like the different things that were in the statistical game versus the regress list. And overall, like even from the people that I talked to in my class, I feel like I have a more foundational background when it comes to statistics, because I've been in 3 statistics classes now. So with all of that, like it definitely made it easier for me to remember it, and going back and being able to play the game as many times as I wanted to was a lot more helpful, because if there was something for some reason I just couldn't remember it and I needed that like refresher, I could do it for fun instead of having to like sit and like make myself go through the treasury of reading a book or something. Books, man. Sometimes when you have so many of them, because you're in so many classes, it's hard to remember exactly what page you saw something on for all of the different classes you're in. So having like a game that'll reinforce it, it makes you want to engage more in the actual class and learn more of the information, because it's putting it in a applicable sense for you to take into the real world, as opposed to this is the class and I'm reading this and what am I going to do with this when it comes to actually applying it in my career or in the future.
Do you have any questions for our student?
Yes.
I use the example of the drag and drop a page in the second game.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
If you had the option to choose the drag and drop version versus an open response version,
I'd rather have a drag and drop. Open response sometimes can be overwhelming, and you don't necessarily know what they're looking for as a response to it, and you could have a multitude of responses that don't necessarily go with exactly what they were looking for. Whereas with the drag and drop, it goes, I remember learning about that, what does that go with? How can I apply that? Or if you remember specifically how it had the symbols up above and then the definitions down below, if you know the definition, all you have to do is find that symbol, which is easy for like an open response. But if you weren't aware of what the symbol necessarily was, you have the option of like picking and guessing your way through it and doing that guess and check. Does that make sense?
Pedagogically they're very different from one another.
Right.
And I was just interested in your response as a user as to how you would see the one versus the other.
I'm a fan of the drag and drop. That was one of the things that I really liked about that part of the game, because it made it more interactive. So I wasn't just sitting there and like answering things out. It actually like gave me something to do.
I can tell you that my graduate students who play the games, over 90% every time report they'd rather have the open response. Never do they want this.
Really?
Well, because then if they type enough, somewhere it'll be right.
That's right.
Any other questions?
Did you have a math phobia before you took this class?
I don't like math. I do not like math. I did have AP Calc when I was in high school, but it was not something that I excelled in. It was overwhelming and daunting at times, and coming into something like statistics where most of the people around you are very weary with like the math and everything, this kind of game made you feel a little bit more comfortable and take some of that like uneasiness off of you about what you're learning, because it actually shows you like applications of what we would do, especially in the sociologist field, of how we would apply these statistics, which I thought was really nice.
Except in a fantasy world.
How did
Well,
you know
yeah.
you had a math phobia?
How did I know I had a math phobia?
Someone told
Because
you?
I get anxiety ridden when it comes to math.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you so much.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate
Thank
you
you for having
taking
me.
your time out of your class schedule today. The things qualitatively they reported, they did report they'd like a game for every single unit possible. But building out a serious game is unrealistic. And also the time it takes to do some of these. But anything they liked here, they reported, they didn't like if the other game didn't do it. They loved the voiceover. Hands down, these are in order of frequent responses. So it was fun, was what they said. But the voiceover thing, the score at the end and the other side came up, oh my gosh, almost every single response. Graphics versus... What I thought was interesting is all the questions were the same, and they thought this was connected to the textbook and this wasn't. And part of me wonders if it's just that they only got the traditional multiple choice questions that they were used to getting. Like if that makes it... I mean, I don't know where that comes from, but that was really interesting to me. They said things like, I liked having the final grade at the end. They loved the voices, so these are just some quotes. And then we did statistical analysis, pre and post test, because who are we without our evidence-based numbers, right?
Okay, so when we started out, we needed to know a little bit about our age groups, and SVSU has traditionally had more older students. So we have veterans and we have returning older students. So you can see 26 or older, 38% of the class was a little older than our average, and we also had some young learners as young as 16. I had two classes, so I had to figure out. I had one class that was larger than the other, so it shows that. As far as male and female, it was very interesting. Last semester I had, for some reason, largely female classes. When I did the pre and the post test and I compared them, the first time I ran through, I just did very easily a paired student t-test. And got at my means and my standard deviations just like they would. But the class sizes were limiting, and at the first run through I didn't get any significance as far as their difference between the means pre and post test. Then in my second class, we can go on. In my second class, I began, actually after that, because there was no significance, I started to break it down and look at some more interesting questions, I think. How a number of students that increased their scores after taking the game, the number that remained the same. So I had a net positive or the same or better, 68% in one of my classes. And there were some students that did worse. So you can see some people did worse. I think this is more valid as far as what I need to know. The number of students that were increasing their scores in the second class also, I saw 78% net positive, same or better. And this class is the one that started out worse. So it was very interesting. I mean, lots of times I think the lack of significance in the means may be the fact that I have quite a number of good students initially at the beginning. They could do these simple things, so they didn't show any difference. But I'm looking for those students that had trouble from the beginning. So, right. Oh, okay.
So what we're doing now is we took...
1 second.
Oh, you the outline.
Yeah, 1
You wanna
second.
talk about
I don't know where I put it. Oh, there I did. I'm sorry about that. There was one class where I had one student who just was either having a really bad time or day with my class, or occasionally, no matter what you do, you don't save all of them. And so when I removed that one student, the second class, the means did become significant, even with my simple student t-test. And as I said, that was the class that had the lower scores to start with. So it was interesting where I had students that were in a class where there was less motivation, where there were poor, the students came in with bad skills that were not as good as the other class. They showed the most improvement overall. So I think that tells us something. Go ahead.
So what we're doing now is we took the likes and dislikes, and this semester we've sort of merged everything together. Instead of making a game for every unit, we know that in the statistics courses, these measures of central tendency are this sort of this hump that they have to get over with their math phobia. So we've taken the best of both games and combined them to make one robust game that they can play. So data is being collected as we speak. And that's what we have to talk about. Do you have questions for us?
I was just wondering if you have any resources on where to get ideas for storylines for games, like you've used the...
This one came right out of, nowhere. I mean, I just basically made. Actually, I was playing a game that was a fantasy game, and so I just put, it was a different kind of. It's called Botanica. It's a little app. It has nothing to do with math, science, or anything. It's just a game that's online. And from that idea, I took it and put it in the fantasy world. But Articulate Storyline, if you go to their webpage, they even have games that are pre-made and you can download if you need them. A lot of them are like puzzles and ready-made little game show quizzes and things like that. So you can use those, but you can also be very, very creative if you want.
I tend to keep storylines much closer to real life because I want them to talk about, they encounter a situation at the mall and something happens. To make it more relatable to what they do on a daily basis. There's one about students who take tests. I use a lot of stories from past students. Just incidences I've had where, students give me reasons why they couldn't hand their homework in. And I've, in 14 years, collected quite a few really fun stories, and they become a basis for this. And I have students, I actually have a team of students in different ed technology classes where they build. One of the assignments is you have to build a game. You provide the topic. You come up with the flow chart and the branching, and I get some ideas there as well, and we partner with things later. So we've been building this repository of things and then I learn what our students are interested in and what they're dealing with on a daily basis in their classrooms.
No, you have to understand that I've also flipped my class, so they do homework and peer tutoring in class. And so they've been working on lots of real life-related social science problems, one after the other after the other. So I decided I didn't want to repeat that, so that's why I went fantasy-based.
Yeah, I think that maybe the topic material that you're trying to have them learn might lend to whether you would want to do more real life situation versus a fantasy. I think for statistics, a fantasy is actually an ideal setting because it is such a complex idea for people to get past a certain point. And so if it's set in this kind of non-realistic world, it almost makes it more approachable because it's like, oh, well, it's just make-believe anyway, and so I guess I'll just have fun with it. So it actually...
Yeah, we needed to encourage them to start it. We could just give them, here, half your grade, extra credit, try this. But no, that was one of the reasons behind why we thought, well, this would be a great way to start, and why we kept both games having some sort of similar fantasy feel. They still got the same statistics questions. Right.
I'm just curious, have you used the Khan Academy at all?
I did.
Do you have a sense of comparison in terms of how students view the gaming versus the online support that a software like Khan Academy provides?
The buy-in changes, right?
I think that's the biggest.
Some of the Khan Academy videos are excellent, and sometimes I have games where I just embed one of those videos. But if the buy-in is what's in it for me, how does it pertain to my class and my A? depending on the student and what level they're at, and developmental level, that can change, I think, how they engage, or if they even decide to engage.
Here's the problem that I face sometimes. I mean, I'm not teaching biostatistics. This is stats for social science. So we use a notation that's simplified. And so they go into, algebraic, manipulations that our students don't do. So sometimes the Khan Academy can actually frighten them and confuse them. So that's the issue. This is a different type of statistics.
Okay.
Is the architecture software platform, forgive me, I just confuse these words all the time, too sophisticated for the students in this class to learn and therefore do what you can imagine I would want to do, which is turn this into an assignment for them? And if the answer to that question is yes, then is there a part of the design that could be turned into an assignment for the students in that class in terms of mining them for ideas and approaches and so forth?
I think that's sort of where you're at this semester. Now that we know what we know, it sort of leads
I think
to...
SimWriter for education, for teachers, it's not too hard to learn, right?
No, it's pretty interesting. There are 50 tools out there like that. There are some that work great on your mobile phone where the background doesn't change, but the question changes in the order, and you can create them quite fast. So that's where my students in technology actually develop them, and they go through it. But in statistics,
Well, I'm looking for new ideas because they want more games. So, and I'm running out. I mean, maybe
And they
I
can
take
easily
the
develop
space next
the
time or a
question.
few things, but the design itself, the branching and the designs, they can certainly have input in how they do that. And we can sit and design a game.
they'll tell you what
what
story arc
questions
they
you
want.
need to put in, or what are you having problems with. Yeah, I think there's a lot of student input that can go into this. And then I have to do the hard part of actually building it.
So that's true. It's sophisticated enough, or you wouldn't want your students to use
That particular tool, there are simpler, easier tools to use that you certainly could have students doing.
The cost of
They feed your students?
They could. My students are practicing K-12 teachers, so everything they do is discipline specific. So the first grade teacher might not want statistics content.
Classes on campus that have students building stuff like this, where the classes can collaborate?
Not yet.
Not yet, but
That's an idea.
if I'm here in the fall, that is number one on my agenda. So.
Oh, I was just going to say, you kind of, I thought, answered his question when you said that you do have your students draw out storyboards.
They actually use the SimWriter software.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be an alternative, I suppose, is to do like they could even do it in PowerPoint, have the screens drawn out in
That
PowerPoint.
was the text students. Right, that's the teacher.
Any student could make a screen in PowerPoint, so I was
Yeah.
thinking
It's one big flowchart.
Exactly.
The power is in the branching. The power is in figuring out those logically incorrect answers.
Yeah.
Or, that's where the power is for the student, to figure out why. For my principals, for instance, they didn't become a principal because they made bad decisions all the time. So in their games, there's never a bad answer. It's always like mediocre, mediocre, best, or all mediocre, because sometimes you only have terrible options. But in the students here, with the math, we can present them with some finite, this is right, this is wrong, but then they have a consequence, like, oh no, you're in the dungeon, and it creates a little bit of anxiety. I don't want to be in the dungeon, I better study, and I'll play the game again to get it right the whole time.
Now, at the very end, you didn't see, but they could get permanently stuck in a dungeon at the end of my game, and the only way out is to go see your professor.
Wow.
Any other questions? We ended where we wanted to end. Well, thank you so much. I don't know what the next talk is in here, but they need a few minutes to get set up. The BAT, I don't know what it stands for. I'm sure it's going to be arousing.
Yeah, but I have to go teach.
Thank you. Have fun at class.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Got around
Here.
Great job. Thank you.
Great job. I can get a sense now of the principal simulations were speaking about.
Yeah, the principals, I have 17 of those, and they're much more, so the principals only have 4 questions to actually answer. But the consequence, if you talk to a parent versus the super, can be a really terrible consequence. Like we have one that's a game that's the aftermath of a student suicide.
Oh, okay.
And the parents want in, but there's also a basketball game, and the PTO's got things,
Yeah.
and the teachers and the counselors all need you, and
Some
Yeah.
realistic outliers.
but those were actually developed by principals and superintendents. So we had them come in and just pick their brains, and that's how they were developed.
Great job.
I would prefer to always work smarter, not harder. Brian, I'll have you know I have an online class right now, and our discussion is not called skepticism, but it's make up your own question about things that bother you in your field. And it's always what in your experience, like you read a bunch of stuff, but your experience tells you something different. So this week, we're having this points to ponder is what we're calling it, but that's been bugging me all morning. That's what this week is. It's intentionally built in to sounding board. And then it also gives me things to talk about later or to do research.
Right now, you're not teaching with teachers.
Well, 30% of our program, 70% of our program are practicing people teachers. I do instructional design and design. 30% of the program are people who work in human resources, development and training. They might do this at a hospital, a large corporation. So, and that section is actually growing and weeding out teachers because you don't need a master's degree in order to be a teacher in anything or to be a principal. So those numbers are going down. But I'm teaching a gamification course right now in the College of Ed because I said, hey, can I just teach this? And they looked at me like I'd grown 3 heads. I promise, people will enroll. And I have more students from non-education majors that have taken it.
Yeah.
But that's been really fun. My main work that I do is with principal game development. We build to make more effective leaders. So they only encounter 4 questions, but they're very narrow and drilled down situations developed by principals and super. So we held a bunch of Super Saturdays and said, why don't you write this out for me? I'll make it a game. And they do it for the good of the cause.
Yeah.
So we've got a bank of those that I've sent all over the country for validation and whatnot. But I was really interested in what you were getting your students to do so much of the legwork. But I have to think that some of your questions have obvious answers, or so much in educational leadership is really subjective, or it changes based on red tape with.
We are, it isn't so much that there are answers per se, but there's a lot of general agreement in terms of sorting out the sort of good from the, from the not so good, the more defensible from the less defensible, the right and wrong. The one I didn't show that I skipped past was we have a whole term-long project where the students generate a multimedia site based on taking existing journal articles and transforming them into teaching materials for one another. Animations, all this kind of stuff. And the part that you'll like, I know you'll like, is, so we tell them at the beginning of the year, you're going to do a print version of this and a web version of this. It takes all term to do it, blah, blah, blah. And rather than just kind of going, what a nice project to have worked on, go home and tell your mom. As we tell them on the first day of class, you're going to engage this kind of really heavy lifting for this project, and it's going to be a 200-page book, and it's going to be this website. And the fact is that the papers were selected to be aligned with the general subject matter of the class. And so the final examination is going to be based on the book you write. Not done. Final examination is not only to be based on the book you write, but it's only going to be based on errors that are left. And it's just evil if you think about it. So.
But
So how do you study for that? That's right.
Like, man, you drive yourself nuts. Like if you're like a super planner like me, that would just drive me nuts forever. Like you'd be everybody for like a peer review, right?
Exactly correct. Exactly correct.
What's wrong with it?
So how do they study for that? How do they study for that final? I mean, we've done this for 20 years now. Year after year after year, they have to come to a room like this that's filled with boards, and they just tear the thing to shreds. Because I'm not the author. I'm not going to answer those questions. You know who the author was.
Right.
Figure it out. And so when I talk about those kind of embedded, beliefs, of all the lessons I want them to get as a science educator, and it really speaks to the skepticism question. This is why I picked the question. If they pick up a resource, the very, very first question I want them to ask always is, do I believe this? Do I believe this? That's all. Is the information there that kind of warrants the claim and all this kind of stuff? And that's what that exercise ultimately is. You open up the page, and the study for the final exam is page after page after page of, do I believe what's written here?
Yeah, it's the question that's the thing I'm constantly dealing with. Like, my students have to debate to MOOC or not to MOOC. And I generally know how they feel, so then I assign them the opposite.
Yeah.
And they have to bring in resources, and then they have to evaluate them. Interesting.
Have you just walked in the face?
Yeah, yeah.
So Rosina was here?
Yes, she just walked out. Yeah, we were planning to end early for the next group.
Very tasty. There's a wind.
So there's, we're on close by and available, so people want to follow us.
Well, I think you probably would be here.
It's a very exciting time.
It is an exciting time. We think we're at that mature stage. If anything, this is overdue. But the thing is, this is just a from the top down as well. And so I think that's as it needs to be. There has to be sufficient commitment to really make it work. So you have a safe drive back. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I live in Fenton, so I know how that drive was going to go and how my drive was this morning. Get the kiddos out of school. But your talk this morning was really interesting, if only to help me affirm that like sometimes, especially coming up from just a bad week of like everything that seems right wrong.
Oh yeah, sure. This is why. Oh yeah, I agree with that. This is why. Yeah, right.
But I was thinking about this when you talk about the positive third point.
Learning related.
Yes.
Yeah.
At Washington State College, for years I would teach this remedial class, each program. And they have a certain class of people with felony convictions. So they can't get financial aid. So they're putting up their money to go to that. And it was teaching. It was one of the it is the most difficult course I ever teach. Getting them from point A to point B. But they're positive. Maybe it's surprising to find there, but they're really motivated for it. One of the biggest takeaways is that's a place I see concentrated. But can I get that in every class? Like I have yet to find the $1 million answer to that.
But as a group, it's easy to see why they share that.
And then we put them all together. Like, you want me to go teach who? What?